When the sun sinks behind the red cliffs of Arizona, the desert does not sleep. It watches. Canyons stretch for miles, carved by time, wind, and forgotten blood. Villages once thrived here, clinging to narrow ledges and dry riverbeds, believing the land would protect them. But the desert remembers everything. Every scream swallowed by the canyon walls. Every body buried beneath sand and stone. Every prayer whispered into the night and never answered. Travelers speak of lights flickering deep inside canyons where no power exists. Voices echo from empty homes. Footsteps follow behind, yet leave no tracks in the sand. Some villages were abandoned slowly. Others vanished overnight. And some were never meant to be found again. Tonight, we walk into the burning silence of Arizona's desert canyons. Into places where the heat fades, the shadows grow long, and the dead still wander between stone walls. These are the most haunted desert canyon villages in Arizona. Hello, my dear friend. I am truly glad you are here with me tonight. Because what we are about to explore is not just a collection of stories. It is a descent into a land where isolation drives people mad, and silence becomes a voice of its own. Arizona's desert canyons are breathtaking by day. Towering red walls. Endless skies. A beauty so vast it feels unreal. But when night falls, everything changes. Temperatures drop sharply. Wind howls through narrow canyon passes. And shadows stretch across stone like living things. They have seen figures standing motionless on cliff edges. They have felt hands brush past them in empty rooms. Some say the desert itself is cursed. Others believe something ancient still lives within the canyons, watching quietly as humans come and go. Before we continue, let me ask you something. If you were traveling through an Arizona canyon at night, and you saw lights glowing from a village that does not appear on any map, would you stop to investigate it, or would you keep driving and never look back? Tell me your answer in the comments. Now, take a slow breath. And let us step into the haunted desert canyon villages of Arizona. At the end of a long, winding road that cuts through a desert plateau, the earth suddenly opens up. This is the entrance to Red Hollow, a village not built upon the land, but carved into it. The settlement sits deep within a narrow, towering canyon, its homes and communal spaces hewn directly from the vibrant rust-colored sandstone walls. Staircases wind up the cliff faces, leading to doorways that open into rooms with smooth, curved ceilings. By day, the canyon is a spectacle of light and shadow, the sun painting the stone in brilliant shades of orange and deep red. It is silent, save for the wind whistling through the narrow passage above. But when the sun dips below the canyon rim, plunging Red Hollow into an early twilight, the silence breaks. Voices begin to echo. They are not the lively sounds of an inhabited village, but a fragmented, haunting repetition. A single word, or a short phrase, will bounce from wall to wall, repeating over and over as it decays. Sometimes they are names, long forgotten by any living record. The echoes do not sound urgent or angry. They sound lost, trapped in an endless loop, rehearsing a moment that never concluded. Alongside the auditory phenomenon is a visual one. The canyon walls are not blank. Ancient inhabitants carved figures into the stone, simple stylized forms of people, animals, and spirals. Visitors who camp within the hollow report unsettling experiences with these petroglyphs. From the corner of the eye, a carved figure seems to have shifted its position. An arm that pointed down now appears to point across the canyon. A figure that was standing alone now seems to be part of a group. When stared at directly, the carving is static, exactly as it was. But the lingering suspicion remains that in the moments when no human eye is directly upon them, the stone records adjust themselves. The culmination of a visit to Red Hollow is the departure. Many who spend a night within the canyon walls leave with a persistent, unshakable feeling. They feel as though something has followed them out. It is not a sound, not a sight, but a sensation of presence. A feeling of being watched from just behind the shoulder, a sense that the empty path behind them is not entirely empty. This feeling can last for miles, only fading when the traveler is back under the open sky of the desert plateau, away from the confining walls of stone. Archaeologists confirm Red Hollow was inhabited centuries ago by a Puebloan culture. Then mysteriously abandoned. The echoing voices could be a complex acoustic trick. The canyon acting as a natural resonator for wind passing through specific fissures. Shaped by the many doorways and caves to mimic speech. The moving figures are a classic case of perceptual uncertainty. Where the brain fails to lock a detailed memory of a complex wall carving. Especially in the shifting light of dusk or dawn. Yet, those who have felt the follow-on effect propose another idea. They suggest Red Hollow is not haunted by people, but by attention itself. The village was a place of intense observation. People lived in full view of one another, their lives echoing in the close quarters. That collective watchfulness, the weight of being seen and of seeing, seeped into the permeable sandstone. Now, the place itself observes. The echoing voices are not conversations, but the sound of observation being reflected. Words of notice and recognition bouncing forever. The moving figures are not ghosts walking, but the carvings themselves turning to watch you pass. The feeling of being followed is the culmination of this. It is the attention of the hollow, its ancient, ingrained habit of noticing, clinging to a new subject. You entered its field of view, and it has not yet looked away. Red Hollow remains a place of profound beauty and deeper unease. The wind continues to carve the soft stone. The stars will over the narrow slit of canyon above. And in the deep red darkness, voices practice their single words. And stone figures keep their silent, shifting vigil. It is a village that teaches a subtle lesson. Some places are not meant to be lived in. They are meant to be witnessed. And in Red Hollow, the witness becomes, inevitably, the witnessed. Sunbleach Canyon is a wound in the earth, a deep gash of ochre and sandstone under a relentless, bleached sky. At its heart, nestled where a river once carved a fertile path, lies the Sunbleach Canyon settlement. The buildings are adobe and sun-dried brick, their outlines softened by decades of wind-blown sand. Wooden beams, stripped of all moisture and color, protrude from rooflines like skeletal ribs. The silence here is absolute, a physical weight under the sun. This was not a place of gradual decline. It was a community severed by a single, catastrophic drought. A drought so complete it is still written in the dust. And the deep, dry cracks of the canyon floor. By day, the settlement is a museum of absence. But as the last of the heat bleeds from the rocks and the desert night descends, bringing its shocking, cold clarity, the atmosphere changes. Not of wind, for the air is often still. It is a susurration of many soft voices. The sound of moving sand perhaps, or of ancient timber contracting. Yet, to the human ear, it resolves into something almost linguistic, a faint, desperate conversation happening hundreds of feet below the parched earth. For some visitors, the whisper sharpens into a more distinct and distressing sound. They report hearing faint, choked sobs, or voices choked with dust, calling out for water. The pleas seem to come from directly below the well's opening, a chorus of thirst echoing up from the aquifer that failed them a century ago. These are not the cries of the living, but the lingering echo of a collective, terminal need, trapped in the geology of their despair. The phenomenon is not confined to sound. Many who have chosen to camp within the settlement's ruins have documented a visual mystery with their cameras. In the soft sand of what were once streets and courtyards, fresh footprints appear overnight. They are human in shape and stride, often leading from the doorway of a ruined home toward the central square or the edge of a dry well. They are crisp and detailed in the cool night air, as if made only moments before discovery. But by morning, under the first rays of the sun, they are gone. Not blown away by wind, for the prints are often in sheltered areas. But vanished completely, the sand smoothed over as if it had never been disturbed. It is as if the ghosts here are so light, so devoid of substance, that even their impressions on the world cannot last the dawn. Scientific rationalization points to the unique acoustics and physics of such an environment. Geologists note that the layered sandstone of the canyon acts as a giant resonator. The tremendous temperature differential between day and night causes the rock to expand and contract, creating subsonic groans and stresses. These stresses could be translated into higher frequency whispers as they travel up the narrow stone chimneys of the wells. The cries for water could be a trick of auditory pareidolia, the brain imposing recognizable human distress onto these random, geologic sounds. The footprints present a drier puzzle. One theory involves a specific type of fine, electrostatically charged sand that, under the right conditions of nighttime humidity, can hold a detailed impression with remarkable clarity. The first direct sunlight, however, heats the grains, dispelling the charge and the moisture, causing the entire structure to collapse in on itself instantly, leaving no trace. Another suggestion is more mundane, yet still eerie. The prints may indeed be made by nocturnal animals, like foxes or coyotes. Like foxes or coyotes, whose paw pads can create surprisingly human-like tracks. In fine dust, tracks that are then erased by the slightest pre-dawn breeze. Flowing down the canyon walls. The figure's internal monologue echoes through the desolate canyon. Yet, for those who have stood in the moonlit square, listening to the wells weep. Listening to the wells weep. And watching their own flashlight beam illuminate a trail of fresh prints that lead to a blank wall. The rational explanations feel thin. They speak of a pervasive mood of longing that saturates the settlement. They speak of a pervasive mood of longing that saturates the settlement. The whispers are not random noise. They speak of a pervasive mood of longing that saturates the settlement. The whispers are not random noise, they are the memory of conversation. They are the memory of conversation. The cries are not auditory illusion. They are the memory of conversation. The cries are not auditory illusion, they are the fossilized sound of a community's final thought. They are the fossilized sound of a community's final thought. The footprints are not animal tracks. They are the nightly ritual of a people who cannot accept that their home is gone. Retracing their last, hopeful journeys to the well. Only to have even the memory of their passage erased by the sun. Sunbleach Canyon Settlement does not offer a haunting of violence or tragedy. It offers a haunting of thirst. It is a monument to a basic, elemental need that went unfulfilled. The stones remember the dryness. The air remembers the prayers. The sand forgets the footsteps by morning, but the deep, dark wells remember forever. To visit is to understand that some abandonments are not endings, but a kind of perpetual, desperate waiting. The people are gone, but their need remains, whispering up from the dark, walking the dusty paths, forever searching in the place where the water finally died. On a high, windswept moor stands a village frozen in time. It is called Whisper Stone. The settlement is built among a field of towering, weathered rock formations, each one pitted and carved by centuries of relentless wind. When the gale sweeps across the moor, it passes through these natural stone flutes and arches, producing a constant, low chorus. It sounds like a multitude of hushed voices, a susurrus of secrets exchanged between the stones. This is the public reason for the name, a charming geological quirk. But those who live in the nearby modern town know the truth is far more unsettling. The wind does not just make noise. It speaks. The village itself is a ghost of cobblestone lanes and roofless cottages, abandoned over a century ago. People did not flee a plague or a famine. They simply left, slowly, family by family, until the last door was closed. Visitors come to see the picturesque ruins and to hear the famous whispers. They stand among the stones, listening to the eerie symphony of the air. Most hear only an indistinct rush, a natural white noise. But a few, often those who linger past dusk or who venture there alone, hear something more. Within the cacophony, a syllable will seem to form. Then another. The whispers coalesce into names. They are not random names. They are the names of people from the old village ledgers, names of long-dead residents. Sometimes, they are the names of current townsfolk, whose ancestors lived in the stones. The voice is intimate, as if someone is standing just behind your shoulder, speaking directly into your ear with the breath of the moor. There is no mistaking it. The wind has just spoken a real, specific human name. Hearing the general whispers is a curiosity. Hearing a name from the past is a historical oddity. But hearing your own name spoken from the hollows of the stone is an event that changes a person. Those who have experienced it report a sudden, profound silence that falls immediately after, as if the wind itself is holding its breath. A deep sense of being seen, of being recognized by the landscape, takes hold. They leave quickly, shaken, trying to dismiss it as a trick of the mind. The true consequence arrives with sleep. The nightmares are not varied. They are singular and relentless. The dreamer finds themselves back in Whisper Stone. But it is restored, populated by silent figures, who go about their daily tasks without making a sound. The dreamer walks among them, trying to speak. But they are ignored. Then, from every doorway, from every window, the whisper rises. It is a chorus now, 100 stone mouths hissing the dreamer's name over and over. Rising to a crescendo that is felt rather than heard. The dreamer awakens gasping, the sound echoing in their mind for days. The nightmares often return for weeks, each time more vivid, each time the feeling of being trapped among the whispering stones more profound. Scientists have studied the acoustics of Whisper Stone extensively. They have mapped the wind channels and can predict, even replicate, the tones. They attribute the name phenomenon to auditory pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find familiar patterns in random noise, especially when primed by local lore. The nightmares are a textbook example of psychological suggestion, a self-fulfilling prophecy of fear. Yet, the consistency of the experience challenges simple explanation. Why do only specific names emerge from the noise? Why does the hearing of one's own name trigger such a uniform, devastating psychological response? Old local tales, rarely shared with outsiders, suggest that the villagers did not just hear whispers. They listened to them. They believed the stones offered counsel, secrets, and warnings. Over generations, the collective attention of the villagers, their very act of listening, may have imprinted upon the place. The stones do not whisper history. They whisper an invitation to join the audience, to become part of the silent, watching village in the dream. To hear your name is to be summoned to that audience, to have your identity called into the eternal, wind-swept chorus. Whisper Stone stands quiet under the vast sky, a beautiful ruin with a hidden cost. The wind continues its endless journey through the arches and holes. For most, it remains a song without words. But for a select few, it becomes a personal address, a call from the stones that does not end when you leave the moor. It follows you into your sleep, into your private mind, repeating the one word that anchors you to that place. Your name. A simple sound that transforms a curiosity into a haunting, and the wind into a sentient, remembering thing. Black Mesa Canyon Hamlet rests at the base of a towering stone formation that rises sharply from the desert floor. The mesa dominates the horizon, its sheer walls catching the last light of day before plunging the canyon into shadow. During daylight hours, the village appears ordinary, modest homes clustered along a narrow road, stone and wood shaped by generations of careful living. Night transforms the place completely. As the sun slips behind the mesa, temperature drops faster than expected. Heat drains from the air as if drawn upward into the rock itself. Even in warmer seasons, breath becomes visible. And the ground radiates a chill that seeps through boots and walls. Fires burn higher here, yet provide less comfort than they should. The villagers have lived with this cold for as long as anyone remembers. They say the mesa blocks more than sunlight. It blocks warmth, sound, and sometimes certainty. After dusk, conversation quiets. Doors close early. Windows remain shuttered, not to keep something out, but to reduce the feeling of being seen. The ridge line above the hamlet is where the figures appear. They stand along the edge of the mesa, silhouetted against the stars. The first sightings were dismissed as trick of light or erosion shaped by shadow. The figures returned night after night, always in slightly different positions, always facing the village. Those who notice them feel an immediate weight settle in the chest. Not fear exactly, but alertness. Even from a distance, the presence feels directed, focused, as though each figure has chosen a specific place to observe. The figures remain still, maintaining their distance. The path upward is steep but manageable, worn smooth by years of climbing. As one draws closer, the air grows colder still, and sound fades strangely. Footsteps echo less. Wind seems to slide away rather than pass through. When the figures are close enough to distinguish shape from shadow, they vanish. They do not flee or scatter. They do not dissolve gradually. They simply merge into the rock face, as if the stone opens briefly to receive them. One moment, they stand outlined against the sky. The next, only bare cliff remains. No marks are left behind. No cracks or openings appear where they stood. The mesa returns to stillness, indifferent and silent. Villagers stopped approaching the ridge long ago. Those who tried described the same experience. A growing resistance with each step upward. Legs heavy. Thoughts slowing. The urge to turn back becoming stronger than curiosity. When the figures disappeared, relief followed, sharp and immediate, like pressure releasing. Black Mesa Canyon Hamlet has never fully emptied, but its population has thinned. Some families moved away after too many sleepless nights. Others stayed, bound by land and memory. They learned patterns that are never written down. No one walks alone after dark. No lights are aimed toward the ridge. Children are taught to come inside before sunset without explanation. During the day, the mesa appears unchanged. Sunlight warms its surface. Birds circle high above. The rock looks inert and ancient, shaped only by erosion and time. Visitors often question the stories, standing at the canyon floor and seeing nothing unusual. Then night falls. The cold arrives first, swift and unmistakable. It settles into the hamlet and refuses to lift until dawn. Animals grow quiet. Insects vanish. Even the wind seems reluctant to move through the canyon. The figures appear soon after full darkness. Sometimes there are only one or two. Other nights, a line stretches along the ridge, watching in silence. They do not always appear in the same places. They seem to choose positions deliberately, sometimes overlooking homes, sometimes focusing on the road leading out of the canyon. No one has ever seen them descend. No one has seen them move closer. They remain at the edge, as if the boundary itself matters. Researchers have visited the hamlet, bringing cameras, thermal equipment, and geological surveys. Instruments detect nothing unusual. Temperature readings show expected drops for desert nights, though residents insist the cold feels different, heavier. Thermal cameras show no figures on the ridge, only rock retaining heat unevenly. Audio recordings capture nothing but wind. Despite this, researchers often cut visits short. They report discomfort they cannot explain. Difficulty sleeping. A constant sense of being observed even when no one is visible. Many avoid returning after their initial stay. Local stories speak of the mesa as a place that listens. They say the rock remembers footsteps and voices. They believe the figures are not separate from the stone, but expressions of it, appearing when the canyon grows quiet enough to notice its own presence. These stories are told carefully, without drama, as accepted truth rather than legend. Life continues during daylight. Repairs are made. Crops are tended. The road remains open, though few travelers choose to pass through after sunset. The village does not advertise its strangeness. It simply exists beneath the mesa, waiting out the night. At dawn, warmth returns slowly. The cold loosens its grip. Shadows retreat. The feeling fades with the rising sun, replaced by ordinary sounds and familiar light. The villagers never challenge the boundary. And the mesa continues to watch over the canyon, silent and still, holding its shadows until night returns. Nestled against a sheer, sun-bleached cliff face in the high desert lies Scorpion Ridge Village. A cluster of adobe homes and workshops built around a rare, reliable spring. The land is harsh but beautiful, painted in shades of ochre and dust, under a sky of relentless blue. Yet, from its earliest days, the village shared its home with its namesake. Scorpions were always present, a fact of life in the arid landscape. But in Scorpion Ridge, their presence defied normal explanation. They do not skulk in shadows alone. They carpet the ground in certain arroyos at dusk. They mass on sun-warmed stones in silent, pulsating clusters. It is not uncommon to see hundreds where a dozen would be expected. Entomologists who have visited describe a feeling of profound wrongness. Though the soil and climate show no clear cause. An ecosystem pushed violently out of balance, though the soil and climate show no clear cause. This is not uncommon in certain arroyos at dusk. It is not uncommon to see hundreds where a dozen would be expected. Entomologists who have visited describe a feeling of profound wrongness. An ecosystem pushed violently out of balance, though the soil and climate show no clear cause. Though the soil and climate show no clear cause. This unnatural phenomenon remains a mystery. The numbers are a harbinger of something ancient and malevolent. A sense of impending doom hangs over the landscape. The very fabric of reality seems to be unraveling. A feeling of profound wrongness pervades the air. The landscape itself seems to be twisted and distorted. This is a place where the laws of nature no longer apply. As darkness falls, a second phenomenon begins. Between the crumbling adobe buildings, in the narrow alleyways now claimed by sand and time, pairs of glowing eyes appear. They are a faint, phosphorescent green, set low to the ground. They seem to watch from the gaps in the village's architecture, silent sentinels surveying the ruins of human habitation. The village is abandoned now, and the reason is etched into local history and memory. The residents did not leave. They vanished. It was not a single event, but a slow, creeping disappearance over one terrible season. A person would retire for the evening, and by morning, they would be gone. There were no signs of struggle. Beds were unmade, as if the occupant had just risen. Meals were left half-eaten on tables. Doors remained unlocked. Life seemed to have been paused in an instant, with the human element simply removed. The only clue, found in a handful of these silent homes, were the marks. Deep, singular gouges in the hard-packed clay floors, or on the wooden supports of doorframes. They were not the scratches of an animal trying to get in or out. They were precise, powerful indentations, like the imprint of a single, massive claw. No matching footprint, no other disturbance, just these isolated, savage marks left behind as a silent receipt for a missing soul. Modern analysis offers possible explanations. The scorpion proliferation could be due to a lack of natural predators, or a localized abundance of a particular prey insect. The glowing eyes could be a bioluminescent insect, or even a trick of decaying minerals in the adobe catching the starlight. The disappearances could point to a panicked, coordinated abandonment due to disease or drought, with the claw marks being later damaged from scavenging animals. But the stories passed down by the neighboring tribes tell a different tale. They speak of the spirit of the cliff itself, an ancient consciousness of stone and venom. The scorpions are not its children, but its senses, extensions of its awareness scuttling across the land. The village, with its digging and its spring diverting, was an affront. The glowing eyes are the spirit looking directly through its many lenses. It did not attack the people. It simply collected them. The claw mark is not a sign of violence, but a signature. A mark of ownership, indicating that what was taken now belongs to the ridge. Today, Scorpion Ridge stands empty under the desert sun. The wind whispers through broken windows. The scorpions move in their uncountable legions over the warm stones. The feeling is not one of active menace, but of profound, patient ownership. The village has been fully reclaimed. To walk through it is to feel like an intruder in a kingdom that operates on a slower, older clock. The spring still flows, clean and cold, but no one drinks from it. The houses stand open, but no one shelters within them. It is a preserved snapshot of absence, curated by something that dwells in the bedrock and watches with 1,000 tiny, armored bodies. The claw marks remain in the few structures still standing, a final, unambiguous punctuation to the story of human habitation. They serve as a stark reminder that some territories are only ever on loan, and the true owners, silent and ancient, always come to collect their due. Dust Vale Canyon Town is cradled in the lee of a towering sandstone mesa, a place where the wind should be a memory. The old structures, built from the same red rock as the cliffs, seem to have grown from the earth itself, now slowly being reclaimed by it. But the reclamation here is not one of stillness. It is one of perpetual, restless motion. For in Dust Vale Canyon, the dust never, ever settles. The air in the town is perpetually hazy, filled with a fine, suspended particulate. Step into the windless heart of the canyon, where not a single leaf stirs, and you will still witness the dust in motion. Inside the roofless homes and abandoned workshops, miniature rivers of sand drift lazily across stone floors. They form sinuous patterns, climbing window sills in delicate filaments, or pouring like hourglass sand from one room to the next, all without a discernible breeze to guide them. It is as if the dust is alive with a slow, purposeless curiosity, endlessly exploring the spaces its former inhabitants have left behind. For many visitors, the experience remains a visual marvel. But for others, stepping across the threshold of certain buildings triggers an immediate and distressing physical reaction. The air, thick with drifting particles, suddenly feels viscous and heavy. They report an acute inability to draw a full breath. It is not that the air is gone, but that it refuses to be taken in. The chest feels restricted, the diaphragm meets a strange resistance, as if the atmosphere itself has turned to syrup. This is more than claustrophobia. It is a direct, physiological counterpressure to the simple act of inhalation. This sensation often escalates into something more tactile and terrifying. The feeling of constriction moves from the internal struggle to an external, localized pressure. Individuals describe the unmistakable sensation of a hand, or sometimes two, pressing firmly down on the center of their chest. The pressure is not violent, but it is deliberate and immense, a weight that seems to emanate from the dust-filled air itself, focusing its density onto a single point. It is the feeling of being gently, firmly held down. Of being instructed by an unseen force. To stop breathing. To simply cease. Scientific investigations have focused on the canyon's unique microclimate and geology. The town sits in a rare atmospheric dead zone, a pocket where larger air currents pass overhead but create a stable, low-pressure bubble below. The dust, composed of incredibly fine, electrostatically charged ferrous particles, is kept in perpetual suspension by these stable conditions and its own repelling charges. It drifts on microscopic currents generated by temperature differentials between sun-waked walls and shadowed floors. The breathing difficulty is attributed to a psychosomatic response. A powerful somatic reaction triggered by the brain's panic. At seeing airborne particulates move without wind. The sensation of chest pressure could be a focused muscle spasm. Of the intercostal muscles, a physical manifestation of that panic. Interpreted by the brain as an external force. In this view, Dust Vale Town is a perfect natural laboratory for anxiety. Where the environment visually suggests suffocation. And the mind obediently complies by creating the physical symptoms. Where the mind and environment are inextricably linked. Yet, those who have felt the press of that unseen hand often find the panic theory insufficient. The pressure was too specific, too localized, too intelligent in its application. It did not feel like a product of their own body. It felt like an interaction. This has given rise to a more unsettling interpretation. The dust is not merely charged sand. It is a medium. Perhaps the final, desperate moments of the town's inhabitants, struggling for breath in a catastrophic dust storm or a forgotten plague of the lungs, imprinted themselves upon the very particles that filled the air. The dust now carries a memory, a pattern of that terminal struggle. When a living person enters, their breathing activates the memory. The dust reacts not with malice, but with mimicry, reenacting the sensation of suffocation, gathering itself to replicate the weight of a final, comforting or smothering hand. Dust Vale Canyon Town offers no answers, only this profound and intimate contradiction. It is a place of silent, personal suffocation. The drifting sand is both a beautiful phenomenon and a ghost of asphyxiation. To walk its streets is to move through a memory of air, a memory that is still unfolding. The dust will never settle because the event is not over. It repeats in every sunbeam, in every silent room. And in the tightening chest of every visitor who stands too long in the wrong doorway. Feeling the weight of the past pressed down, gentle and absolute. Reminding them that some towns are not abandoned. They are just held in a single, terrible, breathless moment, forever. Deep within a system of arid canyons, where the sun bakes the earth and shadows run long and cold. Where the sun bakes the earth and shadows run long and cold. This is the Bloodrock Settlement. The towering sandstone cliffs that shelter the few remaining stone foundations are stained a deep, rust red. Geologists will give you the scientific reason, a high concentration of iron oxide in the sediment. But the air here, dry and still, carries a weight that chemistry alone cannot explain. The settlement was brief, a hopeful outpost built by pioneers seeking a new life in the harsh terrain. According to fragmented legends, passed down through whispers more than records, it ended in a single night of violence. Details are scarce, lost to time and perhaps intention. The stories speak of a conflict, a siege, or a terrible betrayal. What they agree upon is the outcome, a massacre that left no survivors within the canyon walls. The settlement was scrubbed from the map, its name spoken only in cautionary tales. The red rock became its tombstone. By day, the canyon is quiet, a place of stark beauty and oppressive heat. Tourists come to see the striking colors, to photograph the way the evening sun sets the cliffs ablaze in crimson light. They rarely stay past dusk. For it is at night, when the temperature plummets and the canyon is swallowed by an immense, star-filled blackness, that the settlement stirs. Campers and park rangers have reported the same phenomenon for decades. They are not the tracks of animals, but the clear, defined impressions of human feet. The prints are wet, glistening faintly in the moonlight, leaving a damp trail in the parched dust. They seem to originate from the central ruin, the old meeting hall. And they lead in one unwavering direction toward the base of the tallest, most deeply stained cliff face. The footprints tell a silent, sorrowful story. They march across the flat ground, through patches of dry scrub, never wavering. They climb over scattered rocks, the impression of toes and heels distinct in the soil. They mark a journey made with purpose, a final walk taken again and again. But they never reach a destination. There are no prints leading away. No sign of a climb, or a fall, or a turn back. It is as if the walker, upon touching the cliff, simply ceased to exist, was absorbed into the blood dark stone, 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 was. Rational investigations are conducted. The prints are photographed, cast, and studied. The moisture is identified as water, seeping from a hidden underground spring, pushed to the surface by some hydrostatic pressure. Skeptics suggest a natural seepage pattern that coincidentally resembles footprints, enhanced by the power of suggestion in a place with such a grim reputation. Yet, those who have witnessed the prints in person speak of a chilling specificity. The gait suggests exhaustion, not panic. The path is direct, as if drawn by a magnet to that one spot on the cliff. The abrupt termination feels less like an end and more like a translation, a passage into the stone itself. This has given rise to a more haunting interpretation of the old legend. Perhaps the massacre was not the end of the story, but a transition. The victims did not merely die in the canyon. They became part of it. Their final moments, their last walk, is imprinted upon the location. Replaying each night. The red stain is not just iron. It is a memorial pigment, a lasting echo of the tragedy. The wet footprints are not water, but a residual impression of that final, collective journey. A procession that forever seeks a doorway in the rock, a passage to a peace the canyon cannot provide. Bloodrock Settlement stands as a stark monument under the desert stars. By day, it is a lesson in geology. By night, it becomes a lesson in memory. The red cliffs watch, silent and imposing. And on the ground below, a path is walked by unseen feet. A journey that always begins, and never, ever ends. Stopping short at the edge of stone and story. Forever asking a question of the wall that has no answer. Echo Grave Village was founded on a gentle rise of land where the soil appeared rich and stable. A narrow stream curved nearby, and fields spread easily in every direction. At the edge of the settlement sat a small burial ground, modest and old, marked by simple stones and low fencing. The graves predated the village itself, but no records explained who had been buried there first. For years, the burial ground drew little attention. It was quiet, shaded by a few bent trees, visited only during seasonal maintenance. Life in Echo Grave Village followed a steady rhythm. Everything changed after a season of heavy rain. The storms came slowly at first, then lingered longer than expected. The ground softened. Paths turned to mud. When the rain finally stopped, villagers noticed wooden shapes pressing through the soil near the burial ground. Coffins had surfaced, forced upward by saturated earth and shifting pressure. There was no sign of damage or decay. The wood appeared preserved, dark but intact, as if sealed away from time. Lids were closed. No markings identified those inside. The sight unsettled the village. But elders insisted the graves be reburied with care and respect. The coffins were lowered again. Fresh soil covered the ground. The fence was reinforced. It did not end there. In the weeks that followed, subtle changes spread through Echo Grave Village. The earth near the burial ground felt different underfoot. Not soft or unstable, but warm. Even during cool mornings, the soil radiated a faint heat that could be felt through boots. Then movement was noticed. Small shifts beneath the surface disturbed the grass. Not sudden breaks, but slow changes, as if something was adjusting itself underground. Stakes placed to mark the area leaned slightly by morning, their angles altered without clear cause. The village grew uneasy. Animals avoided the burial ground entirely. Livestock refused to graze nearby. Dogs whined and pulled away when walked past the fence. Birds perched elsewhere, leaving the trees near the graves unnaturally quiet. Voices carried farther than expected, echoing softly even when spoken at normal volume. These echoes did not repeat words clearly. They blurred into low murmurs that seemed to come from beneath the ground rather than across it. The effect was strongest near the burial ground, where even footsteps produced faint, delayed responses. Sleep became difficult for those living closest. Some reported dreams of standing in warm earth, unable to move while pressure shifted around them. Others woke suddenly, convinced they felt vibrations beneath their beds. Medical checks revealed nothing unusual. Fatigue and stress were blamed. The warmth spread. It reached the edges of the village, seeping into pathways and gardens. Soil that had always been cool now held heat late into the evening. Frost avoided certain patches entirely, leaving dark, exposed earth while surrounding ground froze. Digging equipment met resistance. Shovels struck hardened layers that should not have existed at that depth. When holes were left open overnight, they were found partially filled by morning, the soil packed tightly as if pressed from below. The burial ground itself changed most of all. Grave markers shifted position by inches. Fences bowed outward. The surface rose and fell subtly, never enough to break apart, but enough to be noticed by those watching closely. The ground no longer looked flat. It appeared tense, drawn tight over something beneath. No new coffins surfaced. Instead, shapes began to move beneath the soil. They were not defined forms, but impressions that traveled slowly, like pressure passing under a blanket. Like pressure passing under a blanket. Mounds rose briefly, then settled. Lines appeared where nothing had been disturbed before. The movement followed no pattern tied to weather or time of day. Villagers stopped visiting the burial ground. Paths were rerouted. Fields were abandoned. Homes closest to the site were left empty as families moved inward or away entirely. Those who stayed avoided the area without discussion, as if agreement required no words. Researchers eventually arrived. They brought thermal scanners and ground-penetrating equipment. Readings showed elevated temperatures below the surface, but no clear source. The heat was diffuse, spread evenly rather than concentrated. Imaging revealed dense layers beneath the graves, but resolution failed beyond a certain depth, returning only distortion. During one survey, a technician placed a hand directly on the soil. He withdrew it quickly, startled not by pain, but by sensation. The warmth was not like sun-heated ground. It felt active, as if responding to touch. No burns were found. The soil temperature measured safe. The echoes worsened. Sound near the burial ground gained depth, repeating in soft waves that overlapped unnaturally. Conversations sounded crowded even when only two people spoke. Silence felt heavy, filled with faint vibrations that could not be traced to any source. Then came the final incident. After another heavy rain, the ground near the burial site shifted dramatically overnight. By morning, the earth had risen several inches across a wide area. No coffins broke through. No cracks opened. The surface simply lifted, smooth and intact, like a slow breath held too long. That same day, Echo Grave Village was abandoned. There was no panic. No alarms. People left quietly, taking only what they could carry. Doors were closed. Animals were released rather than transported. By evening, the village stood empty. No official evacuation was recorded. Those who later returned described the same sensations immediately. Warmth beneath their feet. Movement under the soil. Echoes that did not belong to the air. None stayed long. Today, Echo Grave Village remains uninhabited. Vegetation has reclaimed fields. Buildings stand intact but silent. The burial ground is barely visible beneath overgrowth. Yet the warmth persists. Even in winter, snow melts faster there, revealing dark soil beneath. The shapes still move. Slowly. Patiently. Just beneath the surface. Those who stand nearby say the ground feels alive, not in motion, but in awareness. As if something below is listening, remembering the weight of those who once walked above. Echo Grave Village is no longer marked on local maps. But the earth remembers where it is. And it has not cooled. Hollow Sun Canyon is a place of two distinct worlds, divided by the passage of the sun. The village itself is small, a collection of stone and timber buildings nestled on the canyon floor where a cold, clear river cuts through the rock. By daylight, it appears utterly normal. Sunlight filters through the tall pines on the rim, dappling the roofs. Smoke curls from a chimney. The air is fresh and carries the scent of damp earth and pine resin. It is the picture of rustic tranquility, a peaceful haven seemingly untouched by time. But as dusk settles and the last direct light retreats from the canyon floor, a subtle change begins. It starts with the sky. When the stars emerge, they seem wrong. Constellations familiar since childhood appear subtly distorted, as if viewed through imperfect glass. Some stars seem brighter, others dimmer. The Milky Way, when visible, does not look like a river of light, but a static, frozen crack in the heavens. This celestial wrongness is a prelude to the canyon's central mystery. On certain nights, under no predictable schedule, visitors report a second moonrise. From behind the eastern canyon wall, a second orb will ascend. It is often described as smaller and paler than our own moon, sometimes bearing a faint, greenish hue. It moves at a different speed, climbing the star-wrong sky with a silent, mechanical regularity. It casts a second, cooler set of shadows that interact with the familiar moonlight in confusing, overlapping patterns. It will trace a shallow arc for an hour or two before setting again behind the opposite wall. Or sometimes, simply fading from view like a projection losing its source. The experience of witnessing this does not end with the spectacle. It is the aftermath that leaves the deepest mark. Once the second moon is gone, time itself feels distorted. For some, the hours afterward seem to stretch interminably, a single minute feeling like 10. For others, time compresses, and they are shocked to find that what felt like a brief period was actually an entire night. Watches and phones often disagree with each other, and with the individual's internal clock. The experience of witnessing this does not end with the spectacle. It is the aftermath that leaves the deepest mark. Once the second moon is gone, time itself feels distorted. For some, the hours afterward seem to stretch interminably, a single minute feeling like 10. For others, time compresses, and they are shocked to find that what felt like a brief period was actually an entire night. Watches and phones often disagree with each other, and with the individual's internal clock. The experience of witnessing this does not end with the spectacle. It is the aftermath that leaves the deepest mark. Once the second moon is gone, time itself feels distorted. For some, the hours afterward seem to stretch interminably, a single minute feeling like 10. For others, time compresses, and they are shocked to find that what felt like a brief period was actually an entire night. Watches and phones often disagree with each other, and with the individual's internal clock. The experience of witnessing this does not end with the spectacle. It is the aftermath that leaves the deepest mark. Once the second moon is gone, time itself feels distorted. For some, the hours afterward seem to stretch interminably, a single minute feeling like 10. For others, time compresses, and they are shocked to find that what felt like a brief period was actually an entire night. A common report is a lingering feeling of dislocation, as if the witness has returned from a journey of a different length than their calendar shows. Scientists and skeptics have clear rebuttals. The strange stars could be an effect of the canyon's unique topography, a lensing of the atmosphere that bends light. The second moon could be an exceptionally bright planet like Venus or Jupiter, magnified and distorted by temperature inversions in the canyon air, creating a superior mirage. The time distortion is a well-documented psychological effect of awe and heightened awareness, a temporary disruption of circadian rhythms. Yet, those who have stood in the cold air of Hollow Sun Canyon and watched that pale disk rise speak of a conviction that defies logic. They say the feeling is not of seeing an illusion, but of glimpsing a truth. The canyon, they propose, is not just a geographical feature, but a temporal one. A thin place, not between worlds, but between time streams. The normal daylight village exists in our consensus reality. But the canyon at night, under the wrong stars, exists in a slightly different phase. A parallel layer where the sky is arranged differently. The second moon is not a trick of the light, but the true moon of that other layer, briefly becoming visible. The time distortion afterwards is the effect of resynchronization. The residents of Hollow Sun Canyon live with this dichotomy. They go about their daily lives in the sun, tending gardens and mending fences. But they rarely linger outdoors after full dark. They speak little of the night sky to outsiders. There is an acceptance, a understanding that their home is shared with another version of itself, one that only emerges when the sun is gone. To visit is to experience a profound philosophical rift. You walk the same paths by day and by night, but you are not in the same place. The canyon asks a quiet, unsettling question. Is a location defined by its coordinates, or by the sky that hangs above it? In Hollow Sun Canyon, the ground is fixed, but the heavens are not. And when a second, foreign moon climbs those ancient walls, it does not feel like an astronomical event. It feels like a visitation. A reminder that our world may be just one page in a much larger book. And sometimes, in places like this, the wind turns 2 pages at once. Raven's Drop Hamlet is not found on any scenic route. It lies at the bottom of a deep, narrow canyon, accessible only by a single, winding footpath that clings to the cliff face. The few remaining stone cottages are built into the rock itself, their dark windows looking out over a dry riverbed strewn with bleached stones. The air is cool and still, trapped between the high walls. But the silence is an illusion. For Raven's Drop is never silent. It is a place defined by a ceaseless, watchful congregation of birds. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of ravens inhabit the canyon. They line the high cliff edges like sentinels, perch in dense black clusters on the crumbling rooftops, and hop along the stone-strewn ground. Their population seems impossibly large for the sparse resources of the gorge. They are a living, shifting black veil across the landscape. Their constant calls form a backdrop of croaks and clicks, a language of rustling wings and guttural conversation. Yet, the acoustics of Raven's Drop twist this natural sound into something strange. A single call from a bird on the eastern rim will echo, not with a fading repetition, but with a layered, overlapping response that seems to come from every direction at once. The echoes themselves sometimes echo, creating a disorienting chorus that feels manufactured, as if the canyon itself is speaking in the voice of the birds. As night falls and the canyon plunges into profound darkness, the phenomenon deepens. Those few who have camped in the hamlet report a change in the character of the raven's speech. After midnight, when the world is most still, the cacophony sometimes coalesces. Amidst the clicks and croaks, listeners claim to hear syllables, words, even fragments of sentences in human voices. The tones are whispered, rasping, often unclear, but the cadence is unmistakably that of human speech. It is not one voice, but many, speaking over one another. In a phantom debate or a forgotten prayer. Using the ravens as involuntary conduits. The content is never intelligible enough to understand. Only to feel a chilling sense of eavesdropping on a conversation not meant for the living. This auditory mystery is paired with a visual one. Figures have been observed walking the canyon paths, particularly the old trail that follows the dry riverbed. They are always described as tall and dressed in flowing, ragged black, their forms blending with the deep shadows of the canyon walls. They move with a slow, purposeful stride, never hurrying, never pausing to look at the surroundings. They are seen from a distance, but when a witness attempts to approach or call out, the figures simply vanish. They do not duck behind rocks or enter a building. One moment they are there. And with a blink or a glance away, they are gone. As if absorbed by the cliff face. Or dissolved into the twilight. Ornithologists who have braved the sight point to the extraordinary intelligence and vocal mimicry skills of the raven. They suggest that the birds, over generations, have absorbed and distorted human sounds from past inhabitants, perhaps from arguments, songs, or calls that once echoed in the canyon. The layered echoes are a simple product of the unusual parabolic shape of the gorge, creating a natural sound mirror. The figures in black could be a combination of pareidolia, seeing human shapes in the complex shadows of the canyon, and the movement of the ravens themselves. A flock taking flight from a ledge could, in low light, create the illusion of a shifting, human-like form. Yet, the consistency of the report suggests something more intertwined. A local legend, rarely spoken of, tells of the hamlet's original settlers. A reclusive group who dressed in simple, dark garments and were said to have a peculiar affinity with the local wildlife. They vanished not in a single event, but gradually, their numbers dwindling over years. Until the canyon was left to the birds, some researchers of the paranormal suggest that what remains in Raven's Drop is not a ghost, but a symbiotic memory. The settlers' presence, their voices, their very patterns of movement, were so deeply ingrained. Their mimicry giving voice to the echoes. Their flock movements tracing the old paths. The figures are not apparitions, but momentary coalescences of birds in flight. Shaped by a residual psychic template into the form of their former neighbors. Raven's Drop Hamlet is therefore a place of blurred boundaries. The line between bird and human, between echo and voice, between shadow and substance, is perpetually thin. The ravens are not merely animals living in ruins. Their calls are the town's ongoing conversation. Their flights are its remaining commerce. To visit is to witness a haunting of a most peculiar kind. Where the past does not appear as a specter, but has been learned, remembered, and is now faithfully repeated by the dark, clever inheritors of the canyon. You stand not in a ghost town, but in a living museum curated by birds. Where every croak after midnight might be a word, and every shadow on the path might be a walker from another time. Forever rehearsing their final, silent journey home. At the heart of a vast, sun-bleached desert lies a place where the earth gives up its secrets, one brittle piece at a time. This is Trebone Village. It is not a settlement of the living, but a collection of crumbling adobe ruins, huddled at the base of a towering sandstone canyon. The desert here is relentless, scouring everything with a wind that carries grit and silence. And with each gust, the sand shifts, revealing what it has hidden. Bones. They are found half buried in the dunes, resting on flat rocks, or protruding from the banks of long-dead riverbeds. They are sun-bleached and dry, fragments of ribs, fingers of spines, and the smooth domes of skulls. There is no historical record of a battle here, no evidence of an ancient burial ground. The bones do not match any known species native to the region, nor do they appear human to a trained eye. Anthropologists and paleontologists are baffled. Carbon dating yields erratic, impossible results. Some fragments appear ancient, others merely decades old. They simply exist, an ongoing, random exhumation with no point of origin and no logical explanation. The desert offers them up like terrible, unanswered questions. By day, Trebone Village is a place of heat, haze and deep shadow. The ruins stand empty, the bones lie still. It is with the setting of the sun, when the temperature plummets and the canyon walls glow in the last red light, that the atmosphere changes. The wind often dies completely, creating a silence so profound it feels like pressure on the ears. It is during these still nights that the shapes appear. They are seen from a distance, by campers on the far ridge or by rangers on patrol. They are tall, slender, and distinctly skeletal. They do not move or gesture. Their profiles suggest the same unknown anatomy as the scattered bones, but rendered complete, whole, and impossibly large, etched against the stone. The instinct, for the brave or the foolish, is to approach. To climb the scree slope toward the base of the cliff for a closer look. This is when the phenomenon occurs. As you draw near, focusing on a specific shape, it begins to waver. The crisp edges blur. The solid darkness seems to dissipate, like smoke in a breeze. Within moments, the towering skeletal figure crumbles. Not with a sound of falling rock, but in perfect silence. It fragments into nothingness, dissolving into the ambient gloom of the night. When you reach the spot, there is nothing. No mark on the wall, no pile of stones, no trace that anything was ever there at all. Only the cold rock face. And the feeling that you have just interrupted something private and ancient. Scientific explanations are tentative. The shapes could be a rare interplay of shadows, cast by the jagged rim of the canyon under specific celestial alignments. The act of approaching changes the viewer's perspective, causing the complex shadow to collapse. The bones might be the remains of a peculiar, extinct desert fauna, and the mind, steeped in the location's mystery, projects their completed forms onto the landscape. The mind, steeped in the location's mystery, projects their completed forms onto the landscape. But the consistent testimony points to something more intentional. The standing shapes are not random shadows. They are manifestations. The bones in the sand are not remnants, but anchors. Perhaps each fragment is a physical tether. And when the conditions are right at the specific angle of moonlight, the absolute stillness of the era, the complete form of the creature it belonged to, is projected onto the canyon canvas. A hologram of memory written in darkness. To approach is to introduce light, movement, and the vibration of a living presence. It is an intrusion that the projection cannot sustain, causing it to collapse back into its dispersed, buried state. Trebone Village is a puzzle where the pieces are scattered by the wind. By day, you find the fragments. By night, you see the completed picture, but only from a distance. It is a place that refuses close inspection, guarding its truth in silence and dissolution. The bones will continue to surface. The shadows will continue to stand watch. And any attempt to bridge the gap between the two will result only in empty hands and a cliff face that remembers nothing, offering no answers, only a deeper, more profound mystery. Ghostwind Canyon Town lies tucked between steep sandstone walls where the air never truly rests. The canyon narrows and widens in long curves, shaping every sound that passes through it. During the day, wind whistles softly along the rock faces, carrying dust and dry leaves through empty streets. By night, the wind changes its tone. The town was built decades ago around a modest mining operation that never reached its promise. When the work dried up, families moved away one by one. Schools closed. Homes emptied. Eventually, the last permanent residents left, locking doors behind them and leaving Ghostwind Canyon Town to the silence. For years, nothing disturbed that silence. Then people began to hear laughter. It arrived with the wind, light and fleeting. High voices carried through alleyways and across porches. It sounded playful, careless, unmistakably joyful. Those who heard it stopped to listen, convinced for a moment that children were nearby. But no children lived there. The nearest settlement lay miles away. And no families had returned. The laughter came at odd hours. Sometimes during the day, more often near dusk. A few seconds at most, then it dissolved into the wind as if it had never been there. Visitors initially dismissed the reports as echo and imagination. The canyon's acoustics were unusual. Sound could travel in strange ways. A voice from far away might seem close. Yet repeated visits brought the same experience. Different people, different times, same sound. Children laughing. Not crying. Not calling out. Just laughing, drifting freely on the wind. As word spread, curiosity replaced doubt. Researchers and explorers came to document the phenomenon. Audio equipment was set up along the main street and near the canyon walls. Recordings captured wind, distant rustling, and occasional high-pitched tones. Some claimed faint laughter could be heard beneath the noise, though analysis proved inconclusive. The town remained empty. No lights turned on at night. No footsteps marked the ground. Doors stayed closed. Still, the laughter continued, appearing and vanishing without pattern. Then the toys began to appear. Small objects showed up on doorsteps by morning. A wooden block. A faded ball. A cloth doll missing one button eye. None were new. All showed signs of age and use. They were placed neatly, as if set down with care. No footprints surrounded them. The canyon floor is soft enough to hold marks, yet none appeared near the toys. Doors remained locked. Windows undisturbed. The objects simply arrived overnight and waited on the thresholds until discovered. At first, visitors collected them, assuming they were remnants left behind years earlier and recently uncovered by wind. But the toys kept returning. Even after being removed entirely, new ones appeared in different locations. Some were recognized. Old photographs taken before the town was abandoned showed children holding similar toys. A ball in a group picture. A doll resting on a porch railing. Records confirmed they had once belonged to families who lived there long ago. This realization unsettled those who stayed overnight. As darkness fell, the canyon grew colder. Wind funneled through narrow passages, carrying soft echoes that rose and fell unpredictably. The laughter returned more frequently at night, sometimes sounding closer, sometimes farther away. It never crossed into screaming or distress. It remained playful, distant, and unreachable. People reported the sense of being observed. Not watched in a threatening way, but noticed. The feeling came most strongly near homes where toys appeared. Standing on a porch at night, some felt as though someone small stood just out of sight, waiting quietly. No figures were ever seen. Cameras placed near doorsteps recorded nothing unusual. Time-lapse footage showed toys present at dawn that had not been there the night before. No motion was captured. No shadows crossed the frame. The wind carried on. Long-time residents from nearby areas offered their own explanations. They said the canyon remembered sound. That laughter once filled these streets and never truly left. They believed the wind carried memory as easily as dust. Others believed the toys were meant as reminders. Signs of something unfinished. Not warnings, but gestures. Attempts to stay for extended periods failed. After several nights, visitors reported growing unease. Sleep was difficult. Dreams were vivid and strange, filled with running footsteps and voices just beyond reach. Waking brought relief, followed by a quiet sadness that lingered through the day. No one reported harm. No injuries occurred. No one vanished. The town did not feel hostile. It felt occupied in a way that did not involve bodies or movement. The laughter never followed anyone out of the canyon. Once beyond the sandstone walls, the wind returned to normal. Sound behaved as expected. The air felt empty again. Those leaving often paused at the canyon's edge, struck by how suddenly the sensation ended. Over time, Ghostwind Canyon Town gained an uneasy reputation. Authorities discouraged long visits but placed no restrictions. The site remained accessible, though interest gradually declined. Fewer people came, and those who did rarely stayed overnight. The toys still appear. They are found weathered but intact, placed carefully where doors once opened to families. Some mornings, more than one appears. Other times, weeks pass without any sign. The laughter continues. It does not belong to any single place. Dust gathers. Time passes without urgency. It simply carries what it remembers. Laughing freely in a place that no longer belongs to the living. There is a place in the high desert where the earth has cracked open. A deep and narrow fissure just wide enough for a single footpath. This is Shadow Slot Village. The canyon walls rise hundreds of feet on either side. Leaning in so close at the top that they almost touch. Forming a ragged seam of sky. This geological formation ensures the canyon floor receives almost no direct sunlight. It exists in a state of perpetual twilight. A cool, damp gloom that stands in stark contrast to the blazing desert above. A stark contrast to the blazing desert above. This exists in a state of perpetual twilight, a cool, damp gloom. That stands in stark contrast to the blazing desert above. The village is not built, but nestled. Small stone dwellings are tucked into natural alcoves, their outlines blending with the rock. It is a place of profound silence, broken only by the occasional drip of seeping water and the echo of your own footsteps. But the silence is not empty. It is occupied. Looking up at the towering walls, visitors see dark shapes. They are not distinct figures, but patches of deeper shadow that seem to cling to the stone. They do not move so much as shift, seeming to flow from one crevice to another when observed indirectly. They are the permanent residents of the slot, older than any human structure. From the moment one steps onto the canyon floor, the feeling begins. It is a persistent, unwavering sensation of being watched. Not from one direction, but from all around. The gaze seems to emanate from the walls themselves, from the dark shapes above, from the very air. It is a cold, analytical observation, devoid of malice but full of a profound, alien curiosity. This feeling escalates quickly from unease to a deep, primal anxiety. Every instinct screams that you are not a visitor here, but a specimen. Technology offers no comfort. Flashlights and headlamps, essential in the deep gloom, behave erratically. Their beams, strong and clear at the canyon entrance, become weak and diffuse just a few dozen yards in. They flicker without pattern, sometimes dying completely for several seconds before sputtering back to life. Fresh batteries drain with impossible speed. The darkness of Shadow Slot is not a passive absence of light, but an active force that resists illumination. It seems to drink the light, preferring its own ancient shade. Geologists explain the Slot Canyon as a product of rare, focused water erosion. The lack of sunlight creates a unique microclimate, allowing for certain moisture-loving lichens and algae to grow, which could account for the unusual dark patches on the walls. The feeling of being watched is a common psychological reaction to extreme confinement and sensory deprivation. The flashlight failures could be due to the high moisture content in the air shorting connections, or to mineral deposits in the stone affecting electromagnetic fields. Yet, those who have endured the journey speak of something more. They suggest Shadow Slot is not just a canyon, but a cavity. A place where the layers of the world are thin. The dark shapes are not growths, but glimpses of what lies behind the ordinary surface of rock and air. The observation is not paranoia, but a correct perception of otherness noticing an intrusion. The village's original inhabitants, they reason, did not choose this place for shelter, but for proximity. They lived in the margins. Next to something they could never fully see or understand. Trading sunlight for a whispered closeness to the deep. The end. The failing lights are not a malfunction, but a correction. The slot has its own luminosity, a spectrum invisible to human eyes. And our artificial suns are an affront to its natural state. It tolerates them briefly, then gently extinguishes them, restoring the balance of shadow. Restoring the balance of shadow. Today, the stone dwellings of Shadow Slot Village stand empty. No one lives in the permanent twilight. But the path is still walked by the brave and the curious, each one a brief pulse of warmth and light in the ancient cold. They move quickly, shoulders hunched against the weight of the gaze from the walls. They feel the shapes shift above them. They watch their flashlight beams fade and dance. To leave the slot is to emerge into the shocking brilliance and heat of the desert. A feeling like breaking the surface after a deep dive. The sensation of being watched lingers, fading slowly over miles. Shadow slot remains, a deep crack in the world. A deep crack in the world, a village built not for the living, but for the shadows themselves. It asks a simple, unsettling question. If a place never sees the sun, what does it see instead? And when you enter it, what, in turn, begins to see you? The road to Burnt Sky Settlement winds through a dense pine forest that grows quiet and still long before you reach the clearing. The village itself is a cluster of charred timbers and stone foundations, the skeletal remains of cabins arranged around a central green. It is a scene of old, quiet devastation, a place where fire won a total victory long ago. But the victory, it seems, was not final. For the event that consumed Burnt Sky left a stain upon the place, a wound in the atmosphere that has never fully healed. The most prominent sign of this enduring trauma is the sky. Instead, they hold on to a persistent, smoldering orange. This ochre light has no visible source. It emanates from the air itself, casting long, wavering shadows from the blackened stumps and painting the ruins in a perpetual, false sunset. Stars are invisible here. Drowned out by this spectral afterglow. That lingers until the first true light of dawn finally washes it away. Accompanying this visual phenomenon is a constant, gentle precipitation. A fine, gray ash sifts down from the windless sky. It collects in delicate drifts on the burnt beams, coats the leaves of hardy weeds pushing through the floorboards, and leaves a faint, gritty taste on the lips. There are no active fires for miles. No industrial source. Yet, the ash falls as steadily as mist. A silent, dry snow from a catastrophe that is always happening, but never present. The smell of smoke is the first intrusive element. It is not the sharp scent of a nearby campfire, but the thick, acrid odor of a structure burning. Of wet wood and tar and things that should not be alight. They are the echoes of screams. Not cries of anger or fear, but the raw, panicked screams of people caught in an inescapable moment. They are brief, choked off, and always seem to come from just beyond the next line of ruins, or from the far end of the central green. They are sounds without a source, auditory ghosts carried on a phantom thermal. Geologists and atmospheric scientists have proposed several theories to explain the phenomena. The persistent orange glow could be a form of earthquake light, a phenomenon where seismic stress on the quartz-rich rock beneath the settlement generates brief electrical discharges that ionize the air, creating a sustained, low-level plasma. The falling ash might be a form of dry, electrostatic precipitation, where charged particulate matter from the original fire, still suspended in the unique atmospheric conditions of the clearing, is slowly drawn to the ground over decades. The smells and sounds are attributed to a powerful psychological suggestion. The human brain, confronted with the visual of a burnt village and the feel of ash, fills in the expected sensory gaps, creating the smell of smoke and even the imagined sounds of panic from the suggestible silence. But there is another, more metaphysical interpretation, often voiced by those who have felt the visceral dread the place imparts. They suggest that the fire was of such intensity and terror that it did more than burn wood and stone. It burned a moment into the fabric of reality itself. The settlement is not haunted by ghosts, but by the event. The orange sky is the light of that past fire, still shining through the thin scar between then and now. The ash is not falling from above, but rising from below, from the eternal moment of combustion happening just out of phase with our own time. The smells and screams are not hallucinations, but bleed through, sensory data from a catastrophe that is, in its own pocket of existence, still occurring. Burnt Sky Settlement is therefore a monument to a frozen instant. It is not a place of peace, but of a perpetual, silent emergency. The flames are gone, but their light remains. The victims are departed, but their final seconds are trapped in a loop. Whispered on air currents that do not move. To walk there is to walk through the aftermath of a disaster that refuses to become history. The ash coats your shoulders not as dust from the past, but as evidence of a fire that is still burning somewhere else. In a layer of reality just adjacent to our own, its glow forever staining the sky above the ruins. In the light, and in the silent, falling gray snow. In a remote desert canyon, where the walls rise like the sides of a great, natural cathedral. There is a place where faith did not die. It was buried. This is Lost Prayer Canyon. Centuries ago, a monastic order, seeking the most profound solitude, built their sanctuary here. They carved cells into the soft sandstone and raised a simple, open-air temple to catch the stars. Their time here was brief, their end a mystery. The canyon was reclaimed by the desert, the location of their devotion lost to all but the most ancient maps. Today, only the barest foundations remain, outlines in the dust that the wind threatens to erase with each passing season. The canyon itself is majestic, a deep gash of red and ochre rock under an immense blue sky. The silence is immense, broken only by the cry of a distant hawk or the skitter of a lizard across hot stone. But descend into the canyon's heart, near the site of the old temple, and a different layer of sound reveals itself. Then, as the afternoon heat wanes and long shadows stretch across the floor, the echoes begin. They seem to rise from the ground itself, from fissures in the rock and from the dark mouths of the old, carved cells. It is the sound of chanting. A low, rhythmic, multi-voiced murmur in a language unrecognizable to modern ears. The tempo is slow, meditative, and endlessly repeating. It does not grow louder or softer. It is simply present, a sonic layer woven into the very atmosphere of the place, as permanent as the color of the stone. Acoustics experts have failed to find a source. There is no wind pattern, no trickling water, no natural phenomenon that matches the complex, vocal quality of the sound. It is as if the act of prayer, performed with enough collective intensity for a sufficient time, soaked into the rock and now plays back on a loop, a recording etched into the canyon's geology. The physical response this chant triggers in visitors is the most compelling and unsettling aspect of Lost Prayer Canyon. It is not an auditory illusion. It is a physiological reaction. Individuals report a gradual, heavy feeling descending upon them. A sense of profound reverence, entirely separate from their personal beliefs, washes over them. The urge to kneel becomes overwhelming. It is not fear that drives it. It is a feeling of appropriateness. Of submitting to a ritual far older and more powerful than themselves. Many do kneel, finding themselves on the hot sand, head bowed. As the underground chanting swells in their perception, they often report a feeling of peace in that moment. A silencing of their own internal monologue, replaced by the ancient, resonant hum. Those who resist the compulsion speak of a tremendous internal struggle, a feeling of fighting against the gravity of the place itself. They must consciously focus on moving their feet, on turning away, on breaking the acoustic spell. Leaving the central area feels like pushing through an invisible, resistant field. The official line is one of powerful suggestion and unique infrasound. Certain low-frequency vibrations, inaudible to the human ear but felt by the body, can induce feelings of awe, unease, and even physical pressure. Coupled with the known history of the site, the brain creates the chanting to explain the somatic experience, and the instinct to kneel is a cultural script enacted under duress. But another interpretation lingers. Perhaps the monks did not just pray in the canyon. They prayed to the canyon. Their devotion was not directed at a distant heaven, but into the stone, into the earth. Imbuing the location itself with sacred purpose. The chanting is not a memory. It is the canyon praying. The ritual never ended because the site itself became the practitioner, forever repeating the mantras it absorbed. The compulsion to kneel is not a psychological trick. It is an invitation, a demand for participation in an eternal service. To enter Lost Prayer Canyon is to step into an active place of worship, where the walls are the congregation, and the fissures are the choir. And every living thing that enters is gently, insistently, asked to take its place in the ceremony. Lost Prayer Canyon stands under the relentless sun. A beautiful, haunted sanctuary. By day, it is a geological wonder. By late afternoon, it becomes something else entirely: a church without a roof. A religion without a name. Whose liturgy is a whisper from the earth. And whose only commandment is reverence. Whose choice to kneel or to flee is the only ritual it offers to modern visitors. A direct and personal encounter with a devotion that outlasted its creators by 1,000 years. Coyote Hollow Village sits in a shallow basin where rocky hills close in from all sides. The land dips just enough to trap sound, and at night every noise lingers longer than it should. The village was once a modest settlement, built with stone foundations and timber frames that could withstand harsh weather and isolation. During the day, it appears quiet and unremarkable. When night falls, it becomes something else entirely. Coyotes are common in the surrounding hills, but in Coyote Hollow their presence feels overwhelming. As dusk settles, their howls begin and do not stop. The cries rise and fall without rhythm, overlapping and echoing against the stone walls of the basin. What unsettles visitors is not the volume, but the tone. The howls stretch and bend in ways that resemble human voices trying to imitate animals, or animals straining towards speech. Longtime residents say the sound changes when listened to closely. At a distance, it is familiar wildlife. From within the village, the cries seem directed, deliberate. Some claim they can hear patterns, almost like words forming and dissolving too quickly to grasp. Others say the howls answer one another across the hills, circling the village in unseen paths. The village began to empty years ago, though no single event marked its decline. Families moved away gradually, citing restless nights and an inability to feel settled. Livestock went missing despite intact fences. Tools were found displaced, moved short distances without explanation. The coyotes were blamed, though no clear evidence supported the assumption. Then came the sightings. Figures were seen moving between buildings after dark. Tall shapes slipping through narrow gaps, their outlines barely visible against deeper shadows. What stood out were the eyes. Small points of light, reflecting faintly, watching from places where no one should be standing. The figures never approached directly. They moved along walls, paused near doorways, and vanished behind structures before anyone could react. Those who saw them felt a sudden stillness, as if the air itself tightened. Shouting drove them away, but not immediately. They lingered just long enough to be noticed. Morning brought evidence that could not be dismissed. Deep claw marks appeared in stone. Not scratches in wood or dirt, but grooves cut into foundations and steps. Measurements showed the marks were too deep to be made by any known animal native to the region. The angle suggested strength applied downward rather than raked across the surface. Attempts to replicate the damage with tools failed to match the precision. As nights passed, the howling intensified. Coyotes gathered closer to the village, their cries echoing through empty streets. The sound no longer seemed to come from the hills alone. It reverberated from within the basin itself, bouncing between abandoned homes and collapsed fences. Sleep became nearly impossible. Those who remained reported the feeling of being followed even when alone. Footsteps echoed where no one walked. Movement caught the corner of the eye, gone when turned toward. The glowing eyes appeared more frequently, sometimes multiple pairs at once, watching silently from different angles. No attacks were reported. Nothing chased the villagers outright. Doors were not broken down. Windows remained intact. Local authorities investigated briefly. Wildlife experts suggested stress behavior among coyotes, possibly influenced by environmental changes. Night patrols found nothing unusual beyond increased animal activity. The claw marks were attributed to erosion combined with misinterpretation. The villagers did not agree. One by one, they left. Coyote Hollow Village became empty, its last residents departing quietly before winter. They took what they could carry and left the rest behind. No formal abandonment was declared. The village simply stopped being lived in. Visitors who came later experienced the same patterns. Coyotes howled constantly, even during daylight in rare cases. Their cries carried an unsettling cadence that seemed to shift with attention. When ignored, they sounded distant. When listened to, they felt close. The figures returned. Seen briefly at dusk or deep night, they moved low and smooth between buildings. Cameras placed to capture them malfunctioned or recorded only darkness and sound. The claw marks continued to appear. New grooves etched into stone where none had been the day before. Some overlapped older marks, deepening them. Others appeared on surfaces that should have been unreachable. No tracks led to or from them. Researchers who stayed overnight reported intense unease. By morning, exhaustion set in. Night changes that illusion. Howls rise from every direction, wrapping the village in sound. Shadows shift between structures. Stone bears fresh marks by dawn, proof that something moved with intent. Coyote Hollow Village remains uninhabited. The basin still holds sound the way a bowl holds water. Whatever passes through at night leaves no clear trace beyond stone and memory. The coyotes continue to cry, their voices blending with something harder to define. And the hollow listens, patient and alert, waiting for darkness to return. Nestled in a fog-prone valley between ancient, rolling hills lies Stonevale Hamlet. It is a place of profound stillness, where time seems measured by the slow growth of moss on stone. The hamlet itself is a maze, not by design, but by accretion. Over centuries, residents built low walls of fieldstone to mark boundaries, pen livestock, or simply stack cleared rock. These walls crisscross the landscape in a seemingly endless, irregular web, dividing meadows and woods into a patchwork of small, enclosed spaces. The primary anomaly of Stonevale is its architecture of confusion. The walls appear to shift position overnight. A wall that once ran straight north to south might be found in the morning curving gently eastward. An opening that led to a cottage the previous day might now terminate in a solid barrier of lichen-crusted stone. These changes are never dramatic, never witnessed directly. They are discovered. A farmer steps outside to find a wall he has mended for years now sits 3 feet to the left of where he remembers. A path that has always skirted a particular oak tree now passes directly beneath its branches. This leads directly to the second, more distressing phenomenon. Paths change. The established footways and cart tracks through the hamlet are not reliable. A familiar landmark, like a distinctive boulder or a gnarled fence post, will appear out of place, or not appear at all. The very geography of the hamlet feels fluid, refusing to hold a fixed shape in the mind or on the ground. Because of this, visitors become lost with an ease that defies all logic. Even those carrying maps and compasses report a sudden, disorienting uncertainty. The low stone walls, rarely taller than a person's chest, become the bars of a shifting labyrinth. Sight lines are short, and every turn reveals another nearly identical corridor of grass and stone. The sky, often overcast, offers no reliable bearing. A 5-minute walk to a neighbor's house can become an hour-long ordeal of dead ends and frustrating circles. Some report walking in circles for hours. They describe a peculiar, dreamlike state. Where every clearing looks familiar, yet leads nowhere. They will pass the same oddly shaped stone. Or the same cluster of wildflowers repeatedly. Despite walking in what they believe is a straight line. Exhaustion sets in, not just physical, but mental. As the trust between memory and environment completely breaks down. Rescue is often a matter of luck, or of a local resident. Who seems unaffected, appearing calmly from behind a wall to guide the lost person out. Surveyors and cartographers have been baffled. Their precise instruments show no magnetic anomaly strong enough to disrupt a compass. Satellite imagery depicts a static, if complex, network of walls. Psychologists suggest the phenomenon is a potent mix of topographical similarity and suggestion. The uniform appearance of the walls and the repetitive landscape could trigger a form of spatial disorientation known as veering, where a person unknowingly walks in a curve due to slight imbalances in perception. But the people of Stone Vale, few as they are now, have a quieter understanding. They do not believe the walls move. They believe the memory of the land is too long. Every stone wall ever built in the valley, even those that fell down centuries ago, still exists in the Valia's recollection. On certain nights, under the veil of mist or starlight, the land forgets which walls belong to the present day. It remembers all of them at once. What visitors perceive as shifting walls is actually To walk in Stone Vale is to walk not just through space, but through time. The disorientation is the feeling of slipping between layers. The circular paths are not a trap, but a natural route in a nonlinear geography. They do not follow maps, but rhythms. They move with a patient, unhurried gait, feeling for the correct alignment of the present moment, waiting for the path they need to solidify under their feet. The hamlet stands as a quiet testament to a different kind of reality. A place is not just a collection of objects, but a living memory. And in Stone Vale, that memory is restless. The walls are not shifting. The past is. And for those who cannot feel its tides, the present becomes an impossible maze. A gentle but firm reminder that some landscapes are not meant to be mapped, only remembered, one careful step at a time. Crimson Wash Village huddles in the skeletal embrace of a vast, dry arroyo. The buildings, built from the same red sandstone as the canyon walls, are now little more than broken outlines, their foundations scoured and smoothed by a force far greater than time. Decades ago, a catastrophic flash flood, a rogue wall of water and debris born from a distant thunderstorm, funneled down this narrow channel with biblical fury. It did not merely damage the village. It erased it from the map in a single, roaring night. Leaving behind only the silent, sun-bleached bones of a community. Today, the arroyo is a broad, silent expanse of packed sand and gravel, a desert riverbed that sees water only once in a generation. Yet, sound has not abandoned this place. On still evenings, when the heat of the day retreats and the canyon shadows grow long, a new kind of current begins to flow. This grows into the distinct gurgle and rush of moving water. Sometimes, the sound swells to a deep, thunderous roar, the audio imprint of the fatal flood itself, echoing through the dry channel as if the event is trapped in a loop. These water sounds have no physical source. They are phantom hydrology, a chorus of echoes from a river that is no longer there. But the most haunting manifestations are reserved for the nights of the full moon. When the lunar light pours into the arroyo, painting the sands a pale silver and the cliffs a deep indigo, the figures appear. They are not seen in the ruins of the village itself, but out in the center of the wide wash. They stand in small groups or alone, silhouetted against the bright sand. Their forms are wavering, indistinct, like heat haze rising from the desert floor. They do not move. They simply face upstream, as if watching for the water, or perhaps frozen in the moment of its arrival. They are not transparent in the traditional sense, but seem composed of the same moonlight and shadow that fills the canyon, a trick of the eye that persists no matter how long one stares. Scientific explanations for the auditory phenomenon are compelling. Geologists point to the principle of acoustic haunting. The tremendous sound energy of the flood, estimated to have been louder than a jet engine, was absorbed by the specific crystalline structure of the red sandstone cliffs. This stone, under the right temperature conditions, specifically the rapid cooling of even inga, can release that stored sonic energy in minute vibrations. The different sounds, from trickles to roars, represent different layers and frequencies of the original event being played back at random. The figures under the full moon present a different puzzle. Skeptics propose a straightforward answer: they are simply natural rock formations or hardy, dead vegetation. Their shapes anthropomorphized by the dramatic interplay of stark moonlight and deep shadow. The human brain is wired to see human forms, especially in low-light, ambiguous situations. The fact they only appear during the full moon supports this, as that is when the light is brightest and shadows are most defined, creating the ideal canvas for pareidolia. Yet, those who have witnessed them speak of an undeniable emotional resonance. The figures do not look like rocks or bushes. They hold the posture of people, a collective stance of anticipation or dread. Their appearance exclusively in the wash, the very path of the destruction, feels intentional. This has led to a more profound interpretation. Crimson Wash Village may be a site of profound environmental memory. The flood was not just a weather event. It was a singular, traumatic moment imprinted onto the location's geology, atmosphere, and even light. The echoing water sounds are the literal memory of the flood, stored in stone. The figures are not ghosts of people, but ghosts of the moment itself. They are afterimages, psychic silhouettes of the villagers at the instant the water hit, burned into the reflective properties of the sand and air by the sheer force of the event. The full moon's light, powerful and activating, provides the energy to briefly illuminate this fossilized moment of collective attention. Crimson Wash Village, therefore, stands as a monument to a specific second in time. It is not haunted by wandering spirits, but by the event's own echo. The village is gone, but the flood is not over. It continues to rush through the canyon in the form of sound. The people are gone, but their final, unified stance is periodically reprojected onto the landscape that witnessed it. To visit is to stand in two times at once, the silent, dry present, and the roaring, wet past that refuses to recede. You hear the water that is not there. You see the watchers who are not present. And you understand that some places cannot move on. Forever trapped in the moment of their own ending. Waiting under the moon for a flood that has already come and gone. Yet is always, eternally, arriving. Tucked away in a high desert basin lies the ghost town of Nightglass Canyon. It was a mining settlement, founded on the promise of a strange, dark mineral that flecked the local rock. The promise went unfulfilled, and the town was deserted within a decade. The buildings, simple wood and stone structures, are slowly collapsing back into the dust. But the true mystery of Nightglass Canyon is not in its abandoned streets. It is in the walls of the canyon itself, and the peculiar effect they have on those who walk among them. The canyon rock is a deep, volcanic basalt, but it holds a secret within its matrix. Embedded throughout are countless microscopic crystals of a highly reflective mineral. This gives the stone an unnerving property. It does not simply lie in shadow or light. It seems to drink the light during the day, appearing almost black. But as the sun shifts, or when a flashlight beam passes over it, the entire cliff face can shimmer with a sudden, brief silver sheen. Like the scales of a vast, sleeping creature. More unsettling is its reflection of moonlight and starlight. On a clear night, the canyon does not lie in darkness. It glows with a faint, internal radiance, a cool, gray luminescence. It is within this subtly active landscape that the second phenomenon occurs. The faces. They are not carvings. They appear as natural formations in the rock, but their regularity defies geology. A curve of erosion becomes a closed eye. A mineral streak forms a mouth caught mid-sentence. A pattern of crystalline inclusions resolves into a sorrowful, tilted brow. Once you see one, you begin to see dozens, hundreds. They peer from high ledges, gaze from the walls behind the saloon, look up from the dry riverbed. They are of all ages and expressions, a silent, petrified population frozen in the act of observation. Pareidolia, the tendency to see faces in random patterns, is a known human trait. But in Nightglass Canyon, the faces are too numerous, too detailed, and too persistently seen by every visitor to be dismissed as mere imagination. The physical reaction to this place is where curiosity turns to deep unease. After an hour or two of walking the canyon, most visitors report a distinct and growing sensation of pressure in the head. It is not a headache, but a feeling of fullness, of compression from the temples inward, as if the air itself were thickening. This pressure builds to a palpable discomfort. And then, as if a threshold is crossed, the whispers begin. They are not heard with the ears, but perceived within the mind itself. They are fragmentary, a rush of half-formed thoughts and distant, overlapping voices. Some report hearing what seems like snippets of conversation, arguments, or lullabies in no known language. Others describe a torrent of pure emotion, bursts of panic, waves of longing, or spikes of anger that feel alien and intrusive. The experience is profoundly isolating and mentally abrasive. The only relief comes from leaving the canyon's central basin. The pressure lifts, the mental whispers fade, and the world returns to its normal acoustic silence. Geologists have identified the unique mineral composition but are at a loss to explain the psychological effects. One fringe theory suggests the crystalline structure acts as a natural piezoelectric array, generating subtle electromagnetic fields under thermal stress from the day-night cycle. These fields, the theory posits, could interfere with human brainwave patterns, inducing the pressure and the auditory hallucinations. Yet, the faces in the rock suggest a more haunting possibility. What if the mineral does not just reflect light, but consciousness? The town was a place of brief, intense human drama, hope, greed, despair, and finally, abandonment. The unique stone of Nightglass Canyon, charged by the powerful emotions of its short-lived inhabitants and the vast energies of the desert, may have acted as a recording medium. The faces are not random. They are impressions, psychic photographs of the people who lived and suffered there, etched into the very substance of their environment. The pressure and the whispers are not a malfunction of the visitor's mind, but a playback. It is the act of tuning in to a frequency of stone, of momentarily accessing the residual emotional signature of a place. A chaotic symphony of lost thoughts and unspoken words broadcast on a loop from the glittering walls. Nightglass Canyon stands under the stars, its walls glowing with a borrowed light. It is a beautiful, silent, and deeply intelligent place. Intelligent not with a single mind, but with the fractured, echoing minds of all who passed through. To visit is to walk through a gallery of forgotten souls, to feel the weight of their collective memory pressing against your own, and to leave with the chilling understanding that some stones do more than just lie in the earth. They remember. And in the quiet of the desert night, they try, in their own crystalline way, to speak. Last Ember Village lies beyond marked trails, past where roads fade into sand and signs stop appearing. The desert opens wide in that region, flat and empty, stretching until the horizon blurs into heat and dust. Those who reach the village usually do so by accident or stubborn curiosity, guided more by instinct than direction. What remains of Last Ember is small. A handful of stone buildings clustered around a dry basin. Walls worn smooth by wind. Doorways half filled with drifting sand. The village looks abandoned, but not ruined. It feels paused, as if its people stepped away and never returned. There is no official record of when Last Ember was founded. Locals from distant settlements speak of it as a place that was always there, even before clear borders were drawn. They say it served as a final rest point for travelers who pushed too far into the desert and needed shelter before turning back. Most did turn back. Those who stayed too long learned to leave before nightfall. The desert around Last Ember behaves differently after sunset. Heat drains quickly from the ground, replaced by a cold that settles into stone and bone. Wind moves in low currents, carrying fine sand that whispers against walls and steps. Sound travels strangely, sometimes too far, sometimes not at all. It is at night that the lights appear. They are never seen twice by the same person. Small points of glow rise from the sand beyond the village, steady and warm, like distant embers burning without flame. They hover just above the ground, moving slowly, always away from the village and deeper into the desert. Those who see the lights feel an immediate pull. Not urgency, but certainty. The lights seem purposeful, as if marking a path meant for only one set of eyes. They do not flicker or change color. They wait, patient and unwavering, until either followed or ignored. Those who follow them are never seen again. Stories of disappearances circulate quietly among desert communities. A survey team member who wandered off camp. A guide who insisted he knew the land better than anyone. In every case, someone recalled mention of lights the night before. Search efforts never found tracks. The desert preserves footprints briefly, then erases them completely. Beyond a certain distance from Last Ember, even experienced trackers lose the trail. Sand shifts without wind. Landmarks appear familiar until they do not. Compasses fail to settle. Some believe the lights are mirages, tricks of exhausted minds. Others argue they are reflections of distant stars caught in layers of heat and air. These explanations satisfy those who have never seen them. Those who have seen them do not argue. They describe the lights as closer than they appear, yet always just out of reach. Following them does not feel like walking toward danger. It feels like returning to something long forgotten. This is what unsettles listeners most. Last Ember Village itself shows signs of careful departure. No signs of struggle remain. Some structures show evidence of fires burned long ago, their embers extinguished carefully rather than left to die out. The village does not look abandoned in haste. It is from these remains that the village takes its name. The last embers, preserved in memory rather than flame. Researchers have attempted to study the area. Equipment readings show nothing unusual. No radiation. No chemical anomalies. Temperature shifts match expected desert patterns. Satellite imagery reveals no hidden structures or underground chambers. At night, cameras capture darkness. Lights do not appear on film. Infrared shows only cooling sand and stone. Audio equipment records wind and silence in equal measure. The phenomenon refuses documentation. Those who stay overnight often leave early. Sleep comes poorly. Dreams are vivid and restless, filled with long walks and distant glows that never grow brighter. Waking brings a sense of disappointment, as if something important was almost reached but lost again. The desert around Last Ember feels attentive. Not hostile, not welcoming, but aware. Travelers describe the sensation of being observed without direction, as if the land itself is measuring patience and intent. Moving too quickly feels wrong. Standing still feels worse. Local guides refuse to lead anyone past the last marked trail. They say the desert chooses who it claims. They believe the lights are invitations, not traps. Each appearance is meant for a single person at a single moment. To follow them is to accept a decision already made. No one claims to know what happens beyond the lights. Some say the desert opens into paths unseen by ordinary travelers. Others believe the lights guide people into places where distance loses meaning, where walking never leads back. A few insist the lights lead to other villages, older and deeper, hidden beneath layers of sand and time. Last Ember Village remains where it is. The buildings endure wind and heat. Sand moves through doorways and out again. The basin fills briefly during rare rains, then dries. The village waits without decay, held in balance between presence and absence. At night, those who stand at the edge of the village sometimes glimpse a single glow far out on the plain. It burns softly, steady and calm. The urge to follow rises immediately. Most turn away. They return to campfires and companions, to marked paths and known routes. By morning, the glow is gone, leaving only empty sand and unanswered questions. Last Ember lies beyond trails for a reason. It marks a boundary where choice becomes consequence, where the desert stops offering direction and begins asking for commitment. The lights appear only once, and the desert remembers who follows them. Thank you for walking with me through the haunted desert canyon villages of Arizona. These places are silent, sun-scorched, and forgotten by most of the world. But they are never empty. The desert remembers every life lost beneath its sky, every scream swallowed by stone, every soul that wandered too far and never returned. If you ever find yourself driving through Arizona's canyons at night, remember these villages. If you see lights glowing where no village should be, do not stop. If you hear your name carried on the wind, do not answer. And if the desert grows quiet around you, turn back while you still can. Rest well tonight, my friend. And may the canyon shadows never follow you home.